What's up, everyone? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. Today, I will be joined by two guests, a super rare two-guest episode in which I will be joined by Rowan and Julien, who are local activists here in Bucks County, specifically in Doylestown at Lenape Middle School. And then later on in the program, we are going to be diving into some of the history of Juneteenth and why it's important to actually know the real history, not the history that is glazed over in the mainstream media. So with that, I'm going to make sure that everyone can hear, and I'm going to cut over to my guests for the day, Rowan and Julien.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Pretty
Good.
okay.
So thank you guys for joining me, and I really appreciate it because I know Maddie had asked if you guys would be able to join me, and I was like, yes, absolutely, because you guys are absolute rock stars and famous, basically, I would say,
Goodness.
as of lately. But as youth activists, I think it's very important to have you guys on, and you guys are fighting the good fight. So feel free to, I don't know who wants to go first, but feel free to introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are.
Introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Rowan. I'm 13. I'm going into 8th grade next year. My pronouns are he, him, and yeah, that's kind of it.
I'm Julien. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm going into 9th grade. I'm 14 right now.
Awesome. So you guys are both at Lenape, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And 9th grade is also at Lenape.
Yes. Yeah. So for anybody that's outside of Bucks County, most of the middle schools here in Bucks County have ninth grade in middle school, which is unlike many other places where high school has ninth grade. But so we're going to just dive right into it. A lot of people that watched my last episode know that the Central Bucks School Board is throwing some fireballs at the schools, whether that be through the book bannings or the attacks on the LGBTQ plus community, which specifically implicates what you guys have been doing. So just tell me, from your perspective, what's been going on in Central Bucks?
I mean, so much. There are so many things.
It's just like, it's so weird. Like, there's just so many things, and they're all like connected, and it's all just kind of like, it feels like they're trying to kick students that are like minorities out of their schools, basically.
Yeah.
Like, they're just trying to like make them as unwelcome as possible, basically.
And it's like, I feel like it sort of started with when Mr. Burgess got
But
suspended.
it was also like before then though. Like, it's been going on for years.
Yeah, no, it's been going on for years and years,
It
but
just
like
got
I feel
really
like
big with
it
Mr.
got
Burgess.
recognized
Yeah.
because of that. It's like we were like, oh, this is a thing that happened that we're angry about, but like at this point we're not just protesting that, and we're protesting all the horrible things that the schools are
Yeah,
doing.
that was like a thing that like no one really got. They were like, well, why are you just protesting for Mr. Burgess? Like, there's so many other things. It's like, yeah, we're also protesting for that. Mr.
Yeah.
Burgess was just like the final straw, you know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
It's
So-
been like building.
So for people that aren't aware, can one of you guys explain kind of what happened with Mr. Burgess, who's a teacher at Lenape Middle School?
Yeah, okay. So he's a social studies teacher, which is basically just like history and stuff. And they've been like really sketchy about the entire thing. Like, they won't give you a set answer on like what happened and why he got like suspended. And they're just like, well, he's just getting investigated. The only thing they'll tell you is that like the only thing I got told was that it was like for sure like it wasn't anything like he did something weird with like students. It wasn't anything like that.
Mhm.
Like, that was the only information they would give you, and they only gave that to me because I was like out protesting and stuff, and they were like, well, we have to give this kid something, like, but they have been super sketchy about it. Like, we don't really know what happened. Some people say the thing that's basically we're kind of taking as like that's what happened was he gave a number to like um a higher up like thing, then the school like reported bullying to this higher up thing that's above your district investigated, and I guess I don't want to look bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so he has not been reinstated still, right?
No.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So now school's out for the summer. Not to quote Alice Cooper, but so you guys have been protesting for, I mean, seemingly, I guess, like 2 months. I think that's probably accurate at this point.
Yeah, I think it started in like May-ish.
So can you tell me a little bit about the protests, like what you guys have done, what you feel has worked, maybe what you've learned through that process?
I mean, it like it sort of like I said, it was like the whole Mr. Burgess thing was kind of like the last straw, and that's when we did a walkout at Lenape. So we did not go into school all day, and we stayed outside and protested.
Yeah, and after the third day, so we did Tuesday, Wednesday, and then on the third day they had like the school social workers and like Lenape's guidance counselors come out and be like, well, if you do this, you're gonna have to go to court, and you're because you're truant, which that's not the first step they take. Like it was just to scare us. They also made sure that everyone was inside and that like the adults that were watching us had left. Like it was very, we're gonna scare these kids, you know, like because that's not even the first step that they take when you get marked truant. Like I've talked to kids that have had to go to court for being truant, and they're like, yeah, that's like the last step. Like barely anyone goes to court for it.
So, other than the walkout, what else have you guys done since then to bring awareness to these issues?
We've been posting a lot of stuff on it, and we've been like every Friday, I believe, after school we had been protesting, and like it was supposed to be like a big like thing at the top of the Lenape Hill, because there's Lenape and then there's the big hill, and then it's all public property right at the end of that hill. So that's where we've been protesting, especially because like a lot of people who aren't at Lenape were there. So it's just the safest option so that no one got like policed or anything like that.
And they've done like sort of like subtle protesting from inside the school, like drawing hearts and stars on like our hands, and some people like put Post-it notes on Mr. Burgess's door, and just like sort of stuff like that. And like we tried to pass out flyers and stuff, and the principal at Lenape was like, oh, you can't do that because like it's not school sanctioned. But we like, didn't we talk to
we talked to like people about that, and they were like, that's not true. Like you weren't passing them out during this. We were passing them out before school.
Yeah, and outside of the school too.
Yeah, like we weren't inside the school. So they were like, that shouldn't have happened. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the rules. It's been a little while since I was in high school or middle school, to be honest with you. But it's seemingly the least of the concerns, I think, at this point to let kids hand out stuff about their favorite teacher or somebody that's giving them resources. When it comes to beyond what happened with Mr. Burgess, talk to me a little bit about the banning of pride flags in schools.
That I think it start in UNAMI.
Yeah, the first like thing that we really heard, because like it had been like talked about, but we're like, no, there's no way that this was real. But then in UNAMI, they made students or like teachers take it down from their rooms. So that's kind of where it started.
And then I think that like it's like, oh well, one school's doing this, so it's like a lot of other schools started to. And then the superintendent of CBSD, he like said, yeah, we are gonna be banning pride flags in schools. So that's a big thing that we've been protesting too.
I'm pretty sure that it hasn't been like officially, like they haven't had the official policy meeting for it yet. But it's like
something that they really want to do.
Yeah, it's coming up basically. They're gonna do.
And for those maybe that aren't in the know, it's there has been actual emails sent to parents about it and letters about this upcoming policy. It's basically stating that pride flags are now, quote, political. So clearly, if you if you are an ally or if you're a member of the LGBTQ plus community in any way, you know that it's not political to have that flag. Now, whether we think it's political to stand up for these rights, maybe that's the case. But to just to put out and say like, here's this flag, we are allies or we are supportive of this cause, that's not inherently political. So
Yeah. And I was at the school board meeting, we both gave speeches, and I was talking about in my speech how it's like, I mean, like, all flags are like being like, hey, this is a part of my identity and I'm proud of that.
mm-hmm.
And that's just what pride flags are. That's
Yeah.
what the American flag is.
Yeah,
like
they're just like the same as like they basically have the exact same meaning as like the American flag. But you don't think of the American flag as political, or like any other country's flags. Like we don't think of those as political. So it's just very weird.
like who would ask someone to take down the Canadian flag because it's political? Like,
Yeah,
it's just dumb.
It's a silly argument, and to say like, it's unfortunate that in today's reality, I think that maybe like inadvertently these are symbols of politics because of the people that do support or oppose these what these flags stand for. And there's different pride flags, obviously, the different groups that they represent, you know, whether it's the trans rights flag, just the regular pride flag, or there's a few variants still within that, but it's still notable to just say like like you just said, the American flag could easily just be considered political in that same nature. I mean, and nobody's saying that we shouldn't fly those flags in the school or outside the school or in public places. So it's we see like it's almost like one step forward, two step back in a lot of ways, and we're seeing this in. I mean, this is why this is a good interview to have right back to back with having Steve Sullivan on last week to discuss the other policies that are going on regarding book banning, and the targets of those book bans are usually people of color or people in the LGBTQ plus community, whether they be authors or subject matter. So it's very, it's all encompassing and very inherently political when it doesn't have to be.
exactly.
Yeah, and it's all like intertwined too. Like everything they're doing is so like connected with so many other things.
It's just like bouncing off each other.
Yeah, it's just so weird.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, and like almost some of this stuff wasn't even controversial when I was in high school. I graduated in 2014 from CB West to have a pride flag. It wasn't controversial at all for teachers and for people and students to kind of just express themselves in that way. Now, I think a lot of people are more accepting of that in the general populace now than they were in 2014.
Yeah, it's just like it wasn't really like it was just like, oh cool, that's right there.
Exactly.
It's just like it's just weird. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like I don't understand where this came from. They were just suddenly like, this is bad. We can't have this.
Just out of nowhere.
Like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, and for you know, it's unfortunate because you guys are like 10 years, a little bit 10, 11, 12 years younger than me, and this is like almost a resurgence of what I saw when I was a little bit younger, and definitely a resurgence from like your parents when they were younger, to see like, okay, the 80s, we have all this Reagan era hatred towards, you know, specifically gay people at the time, and the disregarding of the HIV crisis. And I mean, explicitly, like this is when we talk about, when I go on my tirades about Reagan era politics or any of this, the Bush era, it's important to remember that this is our history and we have to know our history, which is important later when we talk about Juneteenth, to note that these have been going on for a long, long time, and we've been going towards more equality. And I said this in my campaign. I quoted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in talking about the arc of moral justice, the arc of history bending towards justice, and I always talked about it that we actually have to bend it, not
Exactly.
it won't actually just go by itself. We have to
It won't
make
fund
it.
itself.
Yeah. So, with that being the case, why is it so important for you know, gay youth, trans youth, anything else that non-binary to have resources and have allies in schools? And I guess specifically, what resources are key for students to have in schools moving forward?
Well, it's just like it's like these kids are like you can even like just look at like statistics and stuff. And I like sometimes I don't like statistics, but like they like are so much more likely to like commit suicide and like self-harm and like there's and like be more depressed and like get bullied. So these like resources help to prevent that. Like that's just what it's trying to prevent. And it's like it's not like we're asking for everyone that's ever bullied someone like under the LGBTQ plus umbrella or like under like in a minority. Like we're not asking for these kids to be like suspended or like we're just asking for basic repercussions.
Yeah, we just want, and also just for the kids to be educated so they know not to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they do these things, the teachers can't use excuses like, oh, it's just boys being boys, or oh, they're just angsty. Like,
yeah, it's just like we just need like these resources in place to help teach people, because it's like a lot of these kids like they just don't know. Like there's so many kids in my grade who I'm like, you have no clue what you're saying right now. Like they're like it's just they just aren't mature, I guess. But it's like they just like these resources need to be for them to learn, and then also for like the trans youth and like the gays and everything to like feel like they have a spot. You know?
exactly. Mm-hmm. It's like with so many like things, it's like a lot of people, especially because resources and stuff make you feel seen and make you feel like you're not the only one that is going through this stuff. And that's like important for like LGBTQ plus youth too.
Yeah, because it's like when you see all this stuff in like media and everything, and like you're not there, like you're like, oh, maybe this isn't like normal and stuff. Especially like in the day and age where we're growing up with like just TV and like YouTube and stuff like that, like all the time. Like that's just like it's just being consumed like you're constantly consuming new media and everything. Like it's just you need to like when you don't see anything, you're like, oh, this must be weird. So it's like resources help to be like, oh, just kidding, this is completely normal and okay.
Exactly, and like representation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and beyond the performative representation, I always say, because look, I'm as heteronormative as they come. I am, a big, muscular white man, straight cisgendered man, right? So it's like I'm used to I'm used to the Luke Skywalkers and the Thors as I wear my Asgard shirt here. You guys can't see me, but like I'm used to like seeing myself basically in every single role there is. But that representation and diverse representation, we talk about, I've talked about it in the past, where it's talking about, Black stories that aren't just like the stereotype of like what fits this old school stereotype of an old Black man or whatever it is, right? It's breaking the stereotype, but also having representation in diverse cast, in diverse storytelling, and having people on the screen that look, sound, act like other people. It's not just the same thing over and over and over and over again. And that's not to say that people that look like me aren't going to be on the screen, because that's not going to happen. For the people that are afraid of that, that's not going to happen. It's just to be inclusive. It's always inclusivity and making sure that it's beyond the performative, not to just have a token person on the screen. It's about getting people that represent the actual communities that they're supposed to represent and speak to and be a part of. So that's always something that I like to bring up when it comes to that representation, because it is important to see, Kamala Harris be the first female and African American vice president. It is important, but it's also important to get people into positions of power and on media and elevate their voices to literally fill in the gaps that we just don't have in our representation. So
Yeah, I feel like it's also really good. Like I really appreciate that like even though you are like a cis white straight man, it's like it's really good that you're using your platform cuz like I mean you're also like people know who you are and it's good that you're using your platform to like amplify the voices of people who might not have their voices amplified as much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. But with that, what can people do to help you guys today, or this coming school year, or over the summer? Is there any actions that people can take that I can send them and say, hey, sign this, do this, go do that? And of course, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in here first, which I shouldn't do, but I'm going to do that anyway. But my 2 cents is get involved locally. If you are from Doylestown, if you're from Bucks County, find your local organizations, whether it be, volunteering for the Rainbow Room, if it's finding a Democratic organization that's going to fight for progressive causes, Doylestown Democrats, you guys know where to find me. Finding a candidate like Ashley Ehaus running for Congress that's going to actually stand up for the LGBTQ plus community. The list goes on, but that's my list. That's the political side. But for you guys on the activist side and as students, what are some call to actions that you want people to take moving forward?
I mean, like, there's always like petitions and stuff to sign, and I personally don't really like petitions just because I feel like a lot of the times they don't do as much as like we want them to. But signing those is always good just because it gets like the word out there. And also like if you're like a parent of a CBSD student or like a student like of CBSD and everything, like telling people like messaging people, like there's a Just for Burgess account, like messaging them and being like, hey, this happened to me and this is what my school did. Like that's always a really good thing because it's just like it's more proof that it's not just like a few students. It's like this is a wider thing than just like my 4 friends and I. Like it's bigger and there's so much and it's like stuff like that.
And I'd say also like this is a big thing is like reposting and sharing everything that you can, like any like informational like anything,
like just getting like the word out there.
Exactly, spreading the word as much as you can,
because it's like we can fight for this, but if no one knows about it, like what's the point?
And also going to school board meetings, and talking at them if you can, because the more voices the better.
And like just like don't be a jerk, like just like just if you see stuff happening, like talk about it, or like it's just there's so many like little things that you can do that are just like not being the worst. Like it's like researching stuff and like learning about like LGBTQ plus youth, like POC youth, like learning about all this stuff to like make sure that you aren't part of the problem,
And I like at a couple school board meetings ago, Pari Passy, she said she was talking about how like the schools don't educate about everything that they should, and she was like I mean, I had to like come and educate you guys about Diwali for months on end, and everyone was like, which is it's true, it's just people don't, and it's not even people's fault, it's just that like people need to know more.
Yeah, like especially within like CBSD, like we are not good with teaching about anything outside of like the straight white males like agenda.
World War I,
World War II, and it's like these are like important things, but there's so much that we just miss, like we just skim over. And it's like there's so many like blank patches in our like teachings and stuff that it makes it like when like kids go off to college, they know nothing. Like they just know academic stuff, and it's like there's so many like cultural differences and just it's just there's so much that no one knows because the school just doesn't teach it.
Yeah, and I feel like it's like a lot of the times these people end up learning these things like through their peers or through the internet, which like it's fine. That's why you should repost things. Is that because like if the schools aren't going to teach it, like we have to provide that education, but we shouldn't have to. The schools should be teaching these like actual necessary things.
Yeah,
I think those are all good calls, and the curriculum is decided, at the school board. Well, I shouldn't say that. The school board technically doesn't decide the curriculum, but it influences it, and they're supposed to impact and put forth things like that. But definitely, it's important to share information. It's definitely important to know your history. Go seek different perspectives in history. I will say, hopefully when you guys make it to high school, it gets a little bit better. I did learn a little bit more of that different perspective in high school, but you're right. It is very American and Eurocentric in your history learning, and there's definitely stuff that I had to go out and find out on my own that I wish was taught in schools. So with all that, it's important to go ask questions yourself. Go seek, podcasts, videos, movies, documentaries on those things. I mean, it's always important to do that.
And it's even like you shouldn't have to expect like kids and stuff to like educate you on like their own issues. Like like a lot of the times like people are happy to like be like, oh yeah, this and this about like themselves, but it's also just kind of annoying. Like you can go and do your own research. Like there's so many resources that you can look into, and it's like you shouldn't expect anyone to like educate you for yourself.
Or when people do take that time to explain something to you, be willing to listen, absorb, and grow from whatever somebody's giving them from their experience. And that's key. It's a sense of empathy that goes a long way. Like I wouldn't know about Diwali if it wasn't for what happened here in Doylestown, right? Like there's stuff that I forget if it's Aristotle or Plato, but he said that I know nothing. And it's being humble and having humility and going in and saying, you know what, I don't know about this. I would like to learn more about this. Do you have a resource for me to read or do that, whatever it is? And if somebody's actively going out of their way to provide that for you, make sure that you actually follow through and do it. I think that's very important.
Like just like asking them, being like, oh, okay. And then coming back like a month later and be like, hey, can you like do that again?
Yeah.
It's just like, what's the point?
Yep. I totally get it. But with that being said, do you guys have, anything that you guys want people to go follow, whether it be on Instagram, Twitter, or whatever? I don't know what you guys use nowadays. I'm old now, so I know I'm the youngest person that is in local politics, but compared to you guys, I'm old.
I mean, obviously, Justice for Burgess, if you don't already follow them. I mean, my mom, Lolly Hopwood, she posts a lot of very educational stuff. Yeah. So
it's like
yeah.
And also like if like these people can help you, and then they can also like if for some reason you really want to talk to like us personally, like they can connect you with like it's like they have a lot of resources and like connections. So it's like those are really good accounts.
Yeah, I think following Lolly is always a great suggestion. I know I learn a lot from her as well. So do that if you're watching this right now or listening to this. And yeah, so is there anything else you guys want to say before we jump?
Nothing that I can think of.
So. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
For
having us.
Yeah.
I know this is our first pre-recorded interview, so we'll see how that goes. And hopefully people like it. And if you do, make sure to go follow everything and actually take action in your local community, whether it be Doylestown or not. Go find something to stand up for, because the attacks are going on throughout this country. So once again, Thank you, Rowan. Thank you, Julien, for both coming on, and I'll thank Maddie for telling you guys to come on as well. So, or asking me, all right, guys, I'll see you around town.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
great.
All
Bye.
right. Bye, guys. Alrighty. So, with that being said, we're gonna pivot into our second part of the show, which is going to be about Juneteenth, and not just the regular history of Juneteenth. This is a little bit more of a deeper dive. It's not gonna, I'm not a historical professional, but I do want to dive into some of the stuff that's important to note that is not necessarily covered in some of the surface level discussions around Juneteenth. So, first of all, Juneteenth was this past weekend on June 19th. It was on Sunday. It happened to coincide with Father's Day. So we got the double whammy of two holidays on the same day. But Juneteenth, on the surface, is the celebration of the end of slavery, specifically the Union Army taking over Galveston. I don't know if I have to say that right. In Texas, it's one of them. It was a major port city at the time for international trade for the United States, and specifically through Texas. And that kind of represented the end of the Civil War, and thus the emancipation of all slaves in the United States. Now, that was on June 19th, 1865. I say that it represents that because it's not specifically the whole history and the correct lineage of what happened there. And I want to dive into a little bit of why. And I'm pulling this from information from the ACLU, just general information, and an interview that I listened to about a professor that is specifically well versed in Reconstruction era politics and the Juneteenth holiday as a speaker and a professor. So the first thing that we need to note is when we think about the end of slavery, a lot of people think of the Emancipation Proclamation given by Abraham Lincoln in 1863, I believe. I don't have that in front of me, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. But the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 that freed the slaves was limited. One, there wasn't really an enforcement mechanism other than the war that was going on, which, of course, a war is a war. So, that's about as much of a force you can give. But the Emancipation Proclamation only applied to slaves in the Confederacy. What does that mean? If you were a slave in one of the non-Confederate states, anything that's still loyal to the Union, I believe like Tennessee was one. I'm not sure if Delaware at the time still had enslaved people. But regardless, you can look at the history of who did and who didn't have banned, who didn't outlaw slavery at the time. But for that period, there were still slaves in the Union. So it is important to note that the Emancipation Proclamation, although it was incredibly important and Abraham Lincoln's contribution to the emancipation of enslaved people is incredibly important, it is more important to emphasize the impact of people that were enslaved, that fought back, that fought for the Union, that left the Confederacy, risked their lives to fight for America, because that's what the Union was and is, for their collective emancipation, their collective liberation. So that's not to disregard the Emancipation Proclamation, but it's important to note because I think we, as we just discussed with our interview, our history is almost myopic. It's very surface level. And look, being honest with you on stuff. Some of this is even new to me when I've done research on this history. And I knew that the Emancipation Proclamation didn't apply to every state, but I did not know about Juneteenth until probably 3 or 4 years ago, which is only slightly before anybody else, with the federal holiday being recognized last year. So again, having the humility to talk about these things and being upfront and honest and saying, look, we still have work to do. If someone like me that is literally extremely engaged in politics, extremely engaged with local organizing, still has so much to learn, to give, to educating myself, we all just need to have that self-reflection and say, okay, let's go dig into this history book or the alternative history book, and not alternative facts like the Donald Trump alternate facts, the actual alternate history, the different telling of these stories. So it's important to note that the Emancipation Proclamation, although it did free the slaves in the Confederacy, in theory, did not free all slaves and outlaw all slavery in the Union. The 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment were massive steps forward as well, but did have those exceptions that we discuss in different varieties of how they're impacted and how they're implemented in, let's just say, something like the prison industrial system complex, where we lock people up for life and basically strip them of their rights, and for, a lack of a better term, near enslave people for committing crime. So when we talk about some of this stuff, we have to remember the context and try to give deeper conversation to these things, to look beyond just that, hey, the surface level of, we don't have slaves in this country. Well, we have to make sure that we keep digging and we keep fighting for the liberation and emancipation of people that are enslaved still today across the globe. But with that said, building from there, in 1865, we did have the end of the Civil War, and we did see positive movements towards liberation and emancipation of African Americans. But when we analyze what the history of this holiday is, it was not, and I think the professor, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the professor, but the professor that gave this interview that I listened to about this, he said, and I think it's beautiful way he put it, it was not the end of some era of slavery, but it was the beginning of the real liberation of African Americans and the real liberation and fight for equality and justice in this country, because it was the burst of, okay, we are free, but to truly be free and equal is different than just being free. So you get the Juneteenth holiday as a representation, a symbol of organizing, putting work into the community, and dedicating yourself to the political advancement of all people, specifically people that were formerly enslaved at the time, and now we're free. And then that has been carried forward year after year, specifically in Texas and along mostly in the Midwest. And now last year in 2021, we had the recognition from the Biden administration to make it a federal holiday. Now, listen to this. Now, if you were not a fan of my previous iteration of my program, The Con O Show, I did talk about it briefly last year where Doylestown Township, different municipalities around the country didn't recognize, this is before the federal holiday was recognized, but did not recognize Juneteenth as a holiday in the municipality because stupid reasons. In Doylestown Township specifically, we were given the explanation, and I was there when our supervisor Jen Herring put it forth as a proposal to recognize Juneteenth as a holiday in the township. It was said that, well, it was July, so we can do that next year. The silliness and the audacity of something like that is illuminating, to say the least. And I also want to point out that originally Juneteenth wasn't called just Juneteenth. It was Juneteenth Jubilee. And I actually had to look. I actually have to still look it up, and I'm going to read it off the screen what the Jubilee means. But the Jubilee is a biblical reference to the Old Testament specifically. So this is something that impacted people of the Jewish faith and of Christianity. So it's specifically, and I'm going to be reading now. The Jubilee is the year at the end of the 7 cycles of Shemitah, sabbatical years, and according to biblical regulations, had a special impact on the ownership and management of land in the land of Israel. According to the book of Leviticus, Hebrew slaves and prisoners would be freed, debts would be forgiven, and the mercies of God would be particularly manifest. So inherently built into this was a religious piece of hope, of moving forward and saying, okay, we are free, now we should be free of debts, free of all of this just horrible history. Not to forget it, but free of the chains that kept them down. And it's maybe symbolic is not the right word. It's cyclical in a sense, because you talk about this being, Jubilee for specifically the Jewish people in the Old Testament that is being referenced, which were enslaved in the Old Testament, but also then almost 2 millennia later, you have people in the United States being free. So it is a symbolic religious connection that it used to be called Juneteenth Jubilee, and I'm sure some people in some places still call it that. But that is important history. It's important context to what we recognize here and now. It's always important to note that when we start to have these days, these months, like Pride Month, I'll lean back into what I was talking about a little bit earlier. The symbolic gestures, the performative gestures, like putting up a pride flag, like putting up a big sign for Juneteenth, celebrating it as a holiday, all that's fine. All that's great. And I think it shows what I was kind of hinting at. It does hint at your political leaning, even though it's not. It shouldn't. It shouldn't be political to support the LGBTQ plus community. It shouldn't be political to support, frankly, African Americans in this country. It shouldn't be political. but those symbols and things mean something. So seemingly it is political. But my point here being, we need to go beyond the performative. We can't let consumerism take over these things also. Let's dive a second into that. We can't have Juneteenth turned into this consumerism overload of Juneteenth sales, or, come get your Juneteenth, pillowcases or whatever it is. The same thing with Pride. I honestly don't love how commercialized Pride already is, and how, these quote woke corporations use it as symbology to just say, hey, we support this stuff, and then they donate millions of dollars to anti-LGBTQ politicians, donate to super PACs that don't support those things, donate to nonprofits that don't support the LGBTQ plus community, or donate to, frankly, Republican elected officials that throw people onto the bus for being in a minority status. We need to do better. We need to demand better. And we can do better by saying we need to go beyond the performative. I've said this for so many times. I've said it. I'll say it till I die, I think. I said it on Twitter yesterday. And for Janet, who's watching, hopefully, she said, I hope you talk about this on Twitter or on your show this week. And it's material benefits. The material benefits for any group is important. And it needs to go beyond the performative. It needs to go beyond pandering. It can't just be, hey, let's take young people, for example. This is the easiest one because it's something that I deal with every day. Hey, young people, how about we have, the white, this is not to say, I don't even know if the White House is on TikTok, but God help us if they are. But, performative is, hey, here's Joe Biden on TikTok, eating ice cream or something, right? Material would be, hey, here's a housing policy that's going to help young people afford to buy a home or afford to pay rent. Performative would be, riding a skateboard and, and being that, hello, fellow kids or fellow youths meme of Steve Buscemi. And then material would be providing high-paying jobs or well-paying jobs, union jobs for graduates of college, graduates of trade schools, and people that get out of high school and want to get into the workforce. It is important that we have rising wages, material benefits, and this all ties in because the people that are specifically impacted more than anybody else in these cases are people of color. They have been largely disproportionately affected by policies that leave them out of housing opportunities, that leave them out of employment opportunities, leave them out of educational opportunities. The LGBTQ plus community, which are disproportionately left homeless. The intersection of class and race, sexual orientation, gender. We need to live and operate like we are one, like we are together, that we care about our neighbor, and that we care that we have opportunities for people to better the situation. Not just be left in whatever rut you were stuck in. We want people to have opportunity. And to materially impact that, we have to fight for the collective liberation of all people. The collective equality of opportunity for all people. And that may sometimes feel like, oh, this person got this because of whatever status or whatever it is. And maybe in rare cases that happens. But it's important that we recognize that because we do things for specific groups, that it is not pandering, but it is beneficial to all people. Because when we lift a group of people that have historically been marginalized, let's just take the trans community right now. If we take them and help lift them up and provide them with the equality that they want, the equality that they deserve, then we are all better off because of it. It's as simple as that. Oppression, marginalization, that hurts everybody. That leads to fear. That leads to hatred. It leads to violence. And we can't have any of that. We all, and I said this in, I don't even know, I've already said this in one other episode. We have so much more in common than we ever have been told. Don't let the Tucker Carlsons of the world divide you. Don't let the Laura Ingrams of this world divide you. We have so much more in common. And I will fight hand in hand to make sure that we each have an opportunity in this country, in this world, to better our situations, to chase the promise of the American dream, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because everyone deserves it. And I didn't plan for that to happen so that it kind of lined up this way. And I know they're not the same. But the intersection of these two stories of talking with Rowan and Julien about the issues facing specifically trans youth and the liberation of enslaved people from Juneteenth during Pride Month. As you probably know, there is now a black and brown stripe to the pride flag. Intersectionality is how we get things done. It's how we stand together in solidarity and build a broader coalition that we can fight for better wages, better healthcare, housing for all people, jobs with dignity, retiring with dignity, making sure that we take care of our old, our poor, and our sick. It's pretty simple. Solidarity, intersectionality, we do it together. And with that being said, that is what I have for you today. A little bit of a shorter episode. I apologize for not doing this live. If you couldn't tell already by my change in background, I moved. I bought a house. So this is where I am. I am in my new office space. It's still a work in progress. Soon things will start appearing behind me. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me. If you guys like this episode, leave a comment down below. I know we didn't have a live chat today, so I couldn't interact with you, but leave a comment down below if you did enjoy the show. And you can send guest requests or suggestions to greatersocietymedia@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show and you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Please do that. That really helps us grow. You can hit that bell button to make sure that when we go live or when a video premieres like this one, you can see it. And if you want to support the show for as little as $5 a month, hey, you can totally support for more if you like, but for $5 a month really goes a long way, as I can get the graphics going, I can get different guests on, just doing it the right way, promoting the show, promoting how we get things out there in advertisements on Facebook, Twitter, etc. $5 a month, patreon.com/Greater Society Media. And you can follow the show on Instagram, Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter @ConO'Hanlon. And I hope to see you there. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can follow the show also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you want to hear just the smooth, sweet voice of me and my guest. Usually just me, though. And hit the follow button there for all the audio versions of the show. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy the show, and for future stuff, you could stay right here. And until next week. And I think, unfortunately, I may hop on here at some point before next week, depending on the news. I'm going to leave it at that. So if you guys want to stay up to date with what's going on and ask questions and specifically talk to somebody that's really, really important, not me, somebody more important than me, hit that bell button for when we go live, because there may be a time and a place this before next Wednesday that we need to go live. So stay tuned there. So until next week, or till next time I see you, stay safe, keep fighting the good fight, and I will see you next week.